Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual author event tonight. Thank you for supporting your locally owned independent bookstore and Books and Books. We're thrilled to be here and to be in partnership with Miami Book Fair, Culture Crusaders, Culture Crusaders for this wonderful series of events. Tonight, we're super excited to be hosting Yamile Saied Méndez with FURIA, which came out yesterday. And if you don't know, now you know, is a new Reese Witherspoon YA pick. She's here and she'll be talking with our local author and friend, Chantel Acevedo. Yamile Saied Méndez is a football-obsessed Argentine-American who loves meteor showers, summer, astrology, and pizza. She lives in Utah with her Puerto Rican husband and their 5 kids, 2 adorable dogs, and 1 majestic cat. An inaugural Walter Dean Myers Grant recipient, she is a graduate of Voices of Our Nations and the MFA program in Writing for Children and Young Adults at Vermont College of Fine Arts. Méndez is also a part of Las Musas, the first collective of women and non-binary Latinx middle grade and young adult authors. FURIA is her first novel for young adult readers. Chantel Acevedo was born in Miami to Cuban parents. She's the acclaimed author of adult novels including The Distant Marvels, which was a finalist for the 2016 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction. And she's also a professor of English at the University of Miami, where she directs the MFA program. Muse Squad, The Cassandra Curse was her debut middle grade novel, and she lives here in Miami with her family. Before I hand things over to the authors, I want to point out some buttons that are on your screen. In the bottom right corner, you'll see Ask a Question. That's where you guys need to submit your questions. That's what we're going to use for the audience Q&A a little bit later tonight. And then directly below me and below our authors tonight is the Buy button. That big green button. That's where you can purchase your copy of FURIA from us, and we will send it to you with a signed book plate. So I'll hand it over to our authors, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Here we are. Hi.
Hey, Yamile!
Hi, Chantel!
Congratulations.
Thank
my
you.
Goodness. What an exciting time, and what a beautiful book you've written. I devoured it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna gush. It's gorgeous, and it deserves all the praise and all the wonderful gifts it's receiving from the universe. Like, very well deserved. And I'm so glad I got a chance to read it a little bit earlier than everyone else, and that we get to have this time today. So yeah.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here in this conversation with you, and I'm so grateful that you've read FURIA, and it's so surreal that she's out in the world and that people are getting to know her after I've lived with her in my mind for so long. So
yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how FURIA came to be?
Well, I started writing a long time ago, and I wrote the first draft of FURIA somewhere in 2006. And back then, I was a very young mom of 4 little kids, and Camila came to me fully formed, but I still didn't know her bigger desire, her biggest dreams. And that came to me through revision after revision, because when I finished writing this draft, I wanted to pursue publishing, I knew that I needed to improve my craft. So I started going to workshops and working on different stories, but I always came back to FURIA, which went through many different titles and iterations. But at the end of the day, FURIA has always been this quest of this girl to be able to live her dreams in a society that tells her she can do whatever she wants to do, but doesn't actually apply what it preaches, because that's a lie. That in her society, she cannot become a professional football player, because that's a sport only allowed for men to play. And that was my reality when I was growing up in Argentina. I was born and raised in Rosario, which is known for our main export, which is football players. Leo Messi, arguably the best soccer player of all times, is from my hometown. And there are so many men who have represented our country all over the world. But unfortunately, there have not been the same, there have not been women who are known for playing football or soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a stretch of time when I didn't go to Argentina to visit my family for 7 years for one reason or another, mainly because I had so many little kids. And I was just so homesick that I just wrote what I had in my heart. And I kept going back, at least through my writing, to Rosario, which is the place that I love the most in this world. So that's how FURIA was born.
I love that. And I love that this story and this character come from so deep within you. You know, I feel like as writers, all of our books are special to us. They're all our babies. But every once in a while you write one that you're like, but that's kind of me, you know? Like yes. It's very close. And it sounds like FURIA is maybe that story for you.
It is. Yeah. It's not my first book, but it's the one that is the most me, and that it holds a big chunk of my heart. So definitely.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of continue on that theme, because like it resonated with me as I was reading it. Like you could just tell, like this is coming from such a special place. There's a moment in the book where Camila is discussing one of her favorite books because she's a terrific reader, and it's Carlos Ruiz Zafón's The Shadow of the Wind, which is such a book lover's book. You know, like if you're a writer and a book lover, it's one of my favorites for sure. And she says, I love the bit about leaving a part of ourselves in every book we read. How we collect the fragmented souls and those who found the story first. And so I've already asked what bits of yourself make up FURIA. And I don't know if you wanted to add to that, but maybe a twist on that would be, you know, what other stories sort of lodge themselves in your young writer's heart that led to this place where you are now?
Well, now living in the US as a Latina author, I hear a lot about people who say they haven't seen themselves in books growing up. And that wasn't my reality. Argentina has a very rich tradition of writers. And there was one particular writer, Alma Maritano, and she has not been translated into English, sadly, but she lived and worked and taught in my hometown, and I didn't know about that until I was already in the US. So that's one of the biggest regrets of my life, that I never got to know her in person. But she wrote these books called El Visitante, about kids from neighborhoods like mine that had adventures and were growing up after the terrible dictatorship that my country suffered and that ended in the 80s. So these were children like me who drank mate, who watched football, who had the same dreams and hopes. And so the words of Alma definitely, and that's one of the books that Camila shares with Karen at El Buen Pastor, and that's one of the books of my heart. And I was a voracious child growing up, and I would read everything from The Little Prince, all the fairy tales. There's a Brazilian author, José Mauro de Vasconcelos, who wrote the saddest books in the whole wide world. One is known. One is titled My Sweet Orange Tree, Mi Planta de Naranja Lima. And that was a book that taught me that you can write about very difficult things, but do it in a way that children can approach it. And also that even if you're shown the harsh realities of life, there's always a way to show the magic, no matter the circumstances. So I feel like even though my books are very, very different from Vasconcelos's or Alma Maritano's, they were my mentor books, and they taught me how to tell the story.
I love that, mentor books. I tell my students, these are your teachers 24/7, right? Like the ones who live with you and that you can always return to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Camila not only learns life lessons from books, but also from her own family history. And I was wondering and hoping if you might read from the beginning of the book, because we get a sense of this long past, right? And this road that she has sort of traveled genealogically to get where she is.
I would love to. And that's something that I love, that I always wanted to make a point of. And that's why I started the story in that place when she's talking about her family, that it's Camila's story, but in a way she's telling the story of all the generations of women that came before her and that didn't see their dreams fulfilled, but she's able to live them because of their sacrifice. And that's something that I see in my own life, that I also come from a strong chain, from a long chain of strong women whose probably the world will never know their names, but they made me who I am today. So I wanted to honor them and recognize them in that way. So I'll go ahead and start. And how long would you like me to read?
Oh, I don't know. You can give us a couple of pages.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Like 3 or 4 pages.
Okay. So, chapter 1. Lies have short legs. I learned this proverb before I could speak. I never knew exactly where it came from. Maybe the saying followed my family across the Atlantic, all the way to Rosario, the second largest city in Argentina at the end of the world. My Russian great-grandmother, Isabel, embroidered it on a pillow after her first love broke her heart and married her sister. My Palestinian grandfather, Ahmed, whispered it to me every time my mom found his hidden stash of wine bottles. My Andalusian grandmother, Elena, repeated it like a mantra until her memories and regrets called her to the next life. Maybe it came from Matilde, the woman who chased freedom to Las Pampas all the way from Brazil. But of her, this black woman whose blood roared in my veins, we hardly ever spoke. Her last name got lost, but my grandma's grandma still showed up so many generations later in the way my brown hair curled, the shape of my nose, and my stubbornness. Ay, Dios mío, my stubbornness. Like her, if family folklore was to be trusted, I had never learned to shut up or do as I was told. But perhaps the words sprouted from this land that the conquistadores thought was encrusted with silver, the only inheritance I'd ever received from the indigenous branch of my family tree. In any case, when my mom said them to me as I was getting ready to leave the house that afternoon, I brushed her off. I'm not lying, I insisted, fighting with the tangled laces of my sneakers. Real Nikes that Pablo, my brother, had given me for Christmas after he got his first footballer paycheck. I told you, I'll be at Roxana's. My mom put down her sewing, a sequin skirt for a quinceañera, and stared at me. Be back at 7. The whole family will be over to celebrate the season opener. The whole family, as if, for all their talk of family unity, my parents weren't on speaking terms with any of their siblings or cousins. But my dad's friends and Pablo's girlfriend would be here, eating and gossiping and laughing until who knew when. You know Pablo, Ma. I'm sure he has plans with the team. He specifically asked me to make pizza, she said with a smirk. Now you be on time and don't do anything stupid. Stupid like what? My words came out too harsh, but I had stellar grades. I didn't do drugs. I didn't sleep around. Hell, I was 17 and not pregnant, unlike every other woman in my family. You would have thought she'd give me some credit, be on my side, but no, nothing I did was enough. I was not enough. It's not like I can go to a gigante. I don't have money for a ticket. She flung the fabric aside. Mira, Camila, how many times have I told you that a football stadium's no place for a decent señorita? That girl who turned up in a ditch, if she hadn't been hanging out with the wrong crowd, she'd still be alive. There was a little bit of truth in what she said, but just a little. That girl, Jimena Marquez, had gone missing after a game last year, but she had been killed by her boyfriend, El Paco. He and Pope Francisco shared a name, but El Paco was no saint.
We can snap. Everyone is snapping wildly. We just it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful opening chapter. And not to give anything away, there's a return to some of that in the last chapter, which I thought also was just on a craft level really gorgeous. Language in this is so beautiful. Like it's such a beautiful book. I can't wait to teach it. Actually, I'm teaching this book in my future. Yeah, for sure. Like, I think there's so much to learn from it, and I just wanted to just do another quote. Like I'm just gonna do the professor thing. Do another quote. But but there's another moment where Camila notes, "It took so little for a spark of faith to ignite a fire. It took so little for that faith to turn into ambition." And it's also, right, in the log line, a spark will ignite her.
Yes.
Yes. But I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what is the spark that leads you to the page? Like when you're going to start a new project, when you're going to, or when times are tough and you just don't want to write, like where do you locate for the writers who are watching us? Like where is the spark?
Well, there are two places that I go to, and both are in my past. So I think of myself as a little girl. English is not my first language, as you probably all can tell. I have an accent. I started learning when I was 7, but it was, you know, how it is when you're learning a language in a different country. I didn't have the conversational practice.
Yeah.
So when I came to the US, it was a very rude awakening. But I remember being 15 years old and reading the Spanish-English dictionary and trying to teach myself English. And now I get to write books in English and about a girl from my neighborhood, because I grew up in a similar neighborhood as Camila. In fact, it has the same name. It's Siete de Septiembre. It's the same neighborhood. So I think of myself as a young girl. And now that I'm living the dream that I had when I was 15, I cannot let myself down. And same thing when I started writing, and when I was doing my master's program at the Vermont College of Fine Arts, I would get up at 5 a.m. to get a couple of hours before the kids went to school, because I had a little baby, and you know how it is when you have young children in the house, it all runs on their schedule. So I would just try to get that couple of hours in the morning just for my stories, not only for FURIA, but all the other stories that were born during those dark hours. And I think of that and those sacrifices, and I can't let myself down. So now that I have more freedom because my kids are in school and I have time to write full time, this is the ideal situation that I dreamed of for a long time. So I need to take advantage of that.
Oh, it's like honoring the little Yamile.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
It's honoring her dreams. Yes. Yes. I love that. Oh, people are asking good questions. I see them, but we're going to get to them. But I have my own questions, so I'm going to be greedy with you for a little bit. So I want to move on to asking about soccer or football, which I am the least sporty person you'll probably ever talk to. So I don't know if I'm the right person, but see, I tried to like look a little sporty for tonight.
Awesome.
I don't know. I just tried. I even came out, to the dining room. I said to my husband, "Okay, sporty." He was like, "Who are you fooling?" However, nobody is the answer. But I have to say that reading this book, it was, aside from being beautiful and the language is there's like a real wordsmithing happening there with the language, and the characterization is beautiful, and there's really heavy stuff that's happening in the book, which we'll get to. But it's also a book about a game, right? The beautiful game, as you write over and over again. And as someone who doesn't like really watch sports, is not really into it, those scenes, I was like, and like I was tense, and oh my goodness, and she better get that goal. You know what I mean? I was all over those scenes. So obviously, a testament to your skill, right? That this is a book for those of you listening. You don't have to like sports. You will love this, right? You will be super engaged in it. But my question to you is was that difficult to do? I know you're a lifelong fan, but was it difficult to translate like that play on the pages?
Maybe not, because as I said, growing up, I wasn't allowed to play, and I was a spectator of the sport all my life. So I didn't write it as if I were playing it. I wrote it as if I were watching it. And although it's in Camila's words and her point of view, I try to portray it as if I were watching it from the outside. And so I think that's why it came a little more naturally to me to do it that way, because apart from everything else, I've always been a spectator. And then I have played, and it was a little complicated to straddle that line between showing too much and not make it boring for people who are not into it. But the soccer element is just there because that's Camila's reality. Growing up in that city, Rosario, there was no other option. It was the perfect medium to show her ambition and her passion and her goals. But But like you said, I feel like even if you're not a sports person, it's that other, the emotional, and that was the other thing. It wasn't only the game, just for the sake of the action. You know, like in some of the superhero movies, you see these fights, and my husband will always say, "Oh, I just see fighting. I don't know why they're fighting for." So with Camila, I wanted to show the reader why she's playing, why she's leaving her whole soul on the pitch. It's because it mattered for her to reach the next stage of her journey. So I think trying to weave in that emotional thread into the action scenes is what made them more approachable for somebody who not be interested in the sports aspect of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's that weaving in and out of her head the whole time, and it's both what's happening on the field, but also what's happening in her life and in the stands, and it's all of a piece, right? She's reacting to all of it all the time. Plus, those scenes always move the story forward, you know, a little bit. So they're not just, let's just throw in a game, right? Like, it's not that. Those games develop character, they develop momentum in the story. They do a lot of work, those scenes. So
they have to multitask.
Yeah, they do. That's what they should do, and it's wonderful. Someone asked here in the questions, because it's since we're on it, someone asked about, if you were a pro soccer player, which position on the team would you choose?
I would love to be a midfielder, because you have a vision of the whole pitch and you can kind of like orchestrate the plays. That would be fun. But being a striker is fun because you get to score. But it's not, I mean, the beauty of soccer is not only in the scoring. And some games that are still 0-0 can be super intense and dramatic and satisfying to watch, even if there's no goals. And it's because of the beauty of the play. I mean, there are some teams, and I don't want to go on a tangent. I could talk about soccer forever. I get really fanatical about it. But if we talk about Barcelona from the Guardiola years, they were just so gorgeous. And people would say it's like ballet on the pitch. It's like music on the pitch. So that's the kind of soccer that I like.
If you had a soccer nickname, and you can't pick FURIA.
I can't pick FURIA.
No.
Let me think. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know why. Maybe we're psychic. Maybe you were thinking about it and give me the little spark to try to figure it out. But I can't be FURIA and you can't be Mommy, and that's what the little people in my life call me. So I think it would be. Oh my gosh, it's so, you know what? I'm going to be thinking about this forever and ever. One day I'm going to be driving around and it'll come to me. But, you know, and the thing, it's hard if I don't pick FURIA, because I have a very strong temper. And that it burns fast and bright, but then I can be super pleasant after, but I have it like a sparkly temper right off the bat. But I think oh my gosh, magic could be one. Yes,
I like it.
Magic. That's my word of the year.
There you go. And it refers on these
every time. Yes.
Your other book, On These Magic Shores, as well.
On These Magic Shores, that came out in June. That's right.
That's right. It came out this year too. Mine would be Shipwreck, because I'd be a disaster. Here comes the shipwreck.
I love it so much. Yeah. And it's also hard to think about, because, you know, like in the English word, like in the US soccer arena, there are not a lot of players who have nicknames, but it seems like in Latin America and in Europe, they all do it. The Chulo, La Joya, or Torito, like Little Bull, you know, like it would, they do use them more often, but in English, we don't.
Not so much. No.
Not so much, no.
No, not at all. I wanted to ask you one more soccer question. And, I don't want to blank on this question because it was a good one. Oh, yes. So you have obviously players that you've invented for the story, right? Who are characters. And then there are real players who you reference in the story and sort of refer to their personalities or their history or whatever. What was sort of the process of doing that? Are there any sort of like things you have to worry about when picking a player who is currently?
Well, for example, yes, when I mentioned Dybala a lot because he's a very renowned star in Juventus, and he's also from Argentina, from a province. So he's not from Buenos Aires; he's from a neighboring province of Rosario, which is Córdoba. And Dybala was a lot of what I inspired myself on Diego, but I had to keep an eye out for when she mentions the players that are current, because there's a lot of change. So when I was writing one of the final drafts of FURIA, Cristiano Ronaldo was not on Juventus yet. So that's why he's never mentioned FURIA. Because even though, as I was revising, he did start on the team, we placed the book firmly in 2016 because it was before the France World Cup, before Argentina recognized or professionalized soccer for women, also to establish dollar amounts, because unfortunately inflation in Argentina is so out of control and meteoric that if I mention the peso amount of something 2 months from now, that would be an obsolete number. So we had to firmly anchor the story in a specific year. So I would just make sure when I'm talking about Marta that she has 6 Ballon d'Ors, so the best soccer player in the world. By the time FURIA came out, she had 6, but we left it in 5 when Camila is talking about her, because it was before she won that 6th one.
Right.
So thankfully, I keep myself current. It's not something that I had to go out and research. I know Marta. I followed her career all her life. I'm a huge admirer. So that was easy. And I wish some of the other aspects of the book had been as easy, but not keeping up with my players. And also I wanted to recognize the women who are playing today. For example, the women from the U.S. national team. So I do mention Alex Morgan. And when Diego says, "Oh, you're almost like Messi," and she's very clear that she doesn't want to be compared to another man, that now girls do have their own role models to look up to. And Alex and Marta are some of hers.
Yes. Yes. And Camila herself as a character becomes a role model. We see her develop as a role model with more and more impact. So I don't want to give anything away there, but certainly in her work at El Buen Pastor, right, working with these children, and she develops sort of a mentorship relationship with a little girl who is there too. Yeah. So I found the female relationships in the novel to be really powerful. I don't know if you wanted to talk about those. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Sometimes, for little girls in Argentina, when people ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of them always say, oh, I want to be a model, or I want to be married to a soccer player. Because those are like the more glamorous things that they can think of. And I wish that our little girls had a role model that, works in a lab, who is maybe an athlete. And she doesn't have to be attached to a famous man to be recognized. So Camila sees that she didn't have these role models when she was young in real life, but she had them in the books that she loved. And that's why she shares them with Karen. And then she realizes that her own life, the kids are watching her. And that's what kids do all over the world. And so she recognizes that added responsibility. And so it's paying it forward. Now that she has the role models in Coach Alicia, now she can play a similar part in Karen, who's not interested in soccer at all, but who looks up to Camila.
Yeah. But she also has to look outside of her family for those role models, right? Because within the family, it's a very complicated family and in many ways a toxic family. There's a quote about her mother, because I thought that the mother-daughter relationship was really powerful, and I think very, very honest about our culture too. Sort of what can sometimes develop as a kind of codependency, right? Especially if there's just the one daughter, entre mamá y hija. Like sometimes that can be a little bit difficult. And at one point, she's thinking about her own daughter one day. Like, one day, if I have a daughter, would I push my daughter toward the light so she could be free, or pull her down so I wouldn't be alone in the dark?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there was such wisdom and truth in that, and what some of that motivation could be, right? And the kind of loneliness that one you hope that maybe your mother can fill, or your daughter can fill.
Exactly, especially in their relationship, that the mom was a teenage mom. And so they kind of grew up together. The mom in the story is not even 40 years old yet. So she's younger than me. And so she has this daughter, and she is happy in some ways that her daughter is independent. She wants a better life for her daughter. And at the same time, there's that little resentment that she didn't have those opportunities. So why should Camila have them, you know? So it's like you said, it's a very toxic relationship. And Camila is very critical of her mom. But when I started writing FURIA, I thought that the book was about Camila's relationship with her father. And as I went through the revision process, and as I grew up as a person and as a woman, and I looked back on my life and my relationship with my mom, I understood that it was more of her journey in her relationship with her mother. Because she never wants to be like her mom, but there are many parts in the book that Camila realizes that they're more alike than she likes to think. And that maybe if her mother had been given different choices, her life would have been very different.
You give her such difficult choices.
Yes.
Camila has hard choices to make, and sometimes we cheer with her when she makes them, and sometimes we go, oh no. I mean, and I will, again, not to give it away, there's also a boy.
It's hard not to spoil it.
There's a hot boy in your story.
There's a hot boy, yes.
You've got it's a hot boy story on top of everything else. On top of everything else, you know, he's there as well. But just stepping away from the romantic aspects of it, and it is on top of everything we've already said in terms of compliments, it is swoony. If you all, you know, want a bit of a swoony read, it is, right? Like, hearts pour out of your eyes as you're reading as you're reading some of these pages. But before we get to him, right, and that the romantic stuff, I do want to talk about some of the more serious elements of the novel, right? Because it is a romance, and it is about soccer, and it is about, you know, place, but it's also about, you know, violence against women and domestic abuse and poverty. And so all of these things are touched upon. And I thought they were woven in so seamlessly in the way that the best books do, right? That you don't ignore the reality of this place, that characters are shaped by all of these forces. So I guess I wanted to ask you, as a writer, sort of the difficulty in layering all of these things, but also sort of honoring these really important issues, or addressing them, rather.
Yes, Camila is a product of her society, and she does break through because, I mean, she's the one in a million, like Father Hugo tells her about, the kids from El Buen Pastor. She kind of also reflects that reality that not everybody makes it. I mean, Argentina, it's full of talented soccer players, of girls who have dreams and ambition. I feel like we can find them everywhere in the world, but she does have this inner drive to pursue her dreams and go against everything that's going on around there. I mean, it's a reality. I keep in touch with my country and my family, and it's impossible to ignore the reality with the Ni Una Menos movement that started 5 years ago. But there have been predecessors. I remember when I was in my first year of high school, there was a very famous case of a girl that went missing, and then she was found dead. So it's not something new. It's something that I grew up with, that women are always aware of where to go, what situations to avoid. And it's so sad that it's always the girls and the women who have to be the ones who are aware of danger, instead of teaching men in society, or society as a whole, to protect the most vulnerable segment of our society, who are children and poor women. And so I couldn't ignore Camila living in a working class neighborhood, in government housing. That's something that she sees every day. And I also wanted to show how polarizing the feminist movement can be, not only here in the US, but it's also in Latin America, how people realize that there is something wrong. So many girls go missing every day. There's not a day that goes by that you won't hear about a different name. But at the same time, a lot of people have been reticent to take part of a change. And that hasn't been more vocal until a few years ago with the Green Handkerchief movement, with the Ni Una Menos movement. So, and also because women's soccer has been carried on for the early feminists in the 1900s. The US success today wouldn't be possible if not for the work of these women who fought for the right to play a sport that they loved. So feminism and women's soccer are tightly woven, and you can't talk about one without mentioning the other.
Absolutely. They go hand in hand. And I think that the coach has, in particular, some wonderful moments where she drives home that point, right? That we've made room for ourselves here. Yeah, and I like that Camila too, like her form of activism is through her passion and through her play, right? It is a kind of activism. And I think she learns that, as she goes. Yeah.
Yes, the fact that there can be a girl who can be strong and powerful and do what she loves on pitch in a sport that for many years has been equalized to masculinity. So, and she's doing it and doing it well. That's an act of rebellion in itself.
Absolutely. I love that readers are going to pick up this book and not just have a very good time, but they're going to learn so much, I think, as well. And it's very, it doesn't sort of clobber you over the head with here is a lesson for you to learn. I feel like everything you do is such a light touch. Even the Spanish, which is very like Argentinian, right? Like it's a very Argentinian Spanish slang. I mean, I only got some of it. I didn't catch all of it, right? Because we're not a monolith. We're not a monolith, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. But I loved it because there wasn't any like overly done sort of, those really clunky, overly done contextual clues, you know what I mean? That sort of come in to translate, for the reader. And it's not there, but you're also not lost as a reader, so it just felt
I'm glad to hear.
Yes. It's just a beautiful immersion is what it felt like. It felt like you're taking the reader just being like, welcome to Rosario. Like,
Thank you. That was
here
my goal. Thank you.
You live here now. Well, before I get to the questions, I do want to ask about your swoony hot guy. Christina is like, so swoony.
Yes.
So swoony. Yes. Where did he come from? Like, where did that inspiration come from?
So many guys, so many cute guys that I did not date. But with soccer being such a everybody in the neighborhood in the barrio wants to make it through soccer, right? And that's like everybody's goal, to make it and become this god, because that's what soccer players are for us. Like if I ever met Leo Messi in person, my kids ask me all the time, what would you do? I would faint. I don't know what I would do. I've seen him play many times. I've been so fortunate that I've been able to. I've never seen him face to face. So I would die. But in my neighborhood, there were many boys that made it. And that they were my inspiration for Diego, that they worked hard and they made it to the first division and even went to other countries. There was a girl from my high school who got married to one of these players, and she was the most popular girl in school, as you can imagine, because she was dating the hot guy from Rosario Central's main team. So examples abound. And so he's just like a little mixture of all these guys. But I wanted him to be a good guy. Because, oh my gosh, it's so much harder to choose.
Yes, I was afraid, that he wouldn't be.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and Camila says that it would be so much easier for her if Diego was a jerk, and he's not. And he's not perfect, because he's also a product of that society, but he wants to be better. He has good intentions, and I wanted to show that sometimes even good intentions are not enough. So, but I also wanted to show that it is possible to break away from the toxic masculinity, that men don't have to grow up. And Camila makes a mention of her brother, who is very tender-hearted when it's just the two of them, but he has to put on this mask for the rest of the world and to appear tough and untouchable, pretty much. But he's not that way, and he doesn't want to become like the father. But that's who he's going to be if he continues in that path.
Right.
So I wanted to also show the complexity, not only in my girl character, but also in the love interest.
Yes, there is not a two-dimensional character in the book. They all feel like real life human beings because they're so different, you know. And you're right, they're all, you know, raised in this crucible. And whether you're male or female, that depends how that turns out for you, you know. But what you see are different levels of it, you know. And
yes.
And some people you have great hope for, like Diego.
Yes, exactly.
That's great. But we've mentioned all these celebrities like Messi, but one celebrity we haven't mentioned is Reese Witherspoon.
Okay.
And she's not a soccer player, but we should mention that she selected FURIA to be her YA book club pick, and it's for the month, right? It's for this month.
Yes, it's for, I have the whole month.
The whole month is Yamile's month. How did that come about? How excited were you?
I was just, I don't know how it happened. I just know that one day my editor called me and said, I would love to jump on a Zoom meeting to discuss something fun that came up. I mean, I'm thinking an interview like with, I don't know, or fun bookmarks or something like that. And then I show up, and this is so funny because my son had been to Chick-fil-A the day before, and he had a mask with like a cow mask. He was very adamant that I wear that mask for my Zoom call. And I thought, I don't know, like, I don't know who's going to be in that meeting, but I just had it next to my computer and I was going to put it on. I told my agent and she just laughed and laughed. I was going to put it on, but then I see that everybody at Algonquin starts logging in. And I started getting a little worried, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Because there were some people that I hadn't met before. It wasn't just my two editors. Yeah. And then when they told me that Reese had picked the book, it was before she announced the YA book club. I was stunned, and I had to move some freeze or flight, and I couldn't run away because I'm professional. But I just rose and I was like, I'm so excited. But then that night when the news finally sunk in, I couldn't sleep at all. I don't think I've slept since I received the news, and I don't know how it happened. It's such an honor and a privilege that this book, that when I started writing it, I was told nobody would want to read publish a book about a girl from Barrio in Argentina, and I just kept going at it, and then I was told nobody will read it, even if it's published. And I thought, it'll find its audience. And now, oh my goodness, this added audience, this extra thing that happened to me, it has been such a roller coaster of emotions. But like I keep telling my friends, I'm holding on tight, because for me, my biggest dream was that FURIA would be published one day and that it would find its readers, and just the outpouring of love from the early readers and the people back home that have read it in English even has meant so much to me. That everything else that is happening is just icing on the cake. And I love icing on the cake, by the way. So I will take it and I will savor it while it lasts. And I'm very, very grateful and honored for it. And I hope that one day there'll be more stories like Camila's and FURIA's out featured in this way. So
I'm so glad you picked
it. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you picked it. It's so, I mean, I love celebrating, good books. And when a book is as good as this one, as beautiful as this one, I always think when I read it, I hope they get everything, like all the gifts. Because it is a gift, I think, to readers. So congratulations on that. I'm so happy.
Thank you so much, Chantel.
Happy for you. Let's get to some questions. There's some good ones here. All right. So someone asked about the cover. Yes, this cover is amazing.
Yes.
Is it so striking and beautiful? And what role did you get to play in its creation? Did you get a role?
Well, the artist is Rachel Baker, and she is an amazing artist. And she asked me to send her a few pictures of people that I had in mind for that would look a little bit like Camila. And I actually sent her pictures of my cousin's daughters. She would look a lot like Camila would look. And of course, the final rendering doesn't look like any of my nieces, which you know how it is. In countries, we don't call them second cousins. They're my nieces because they're my cousin's kids, you know?
Yeah.
They don't look like any of the girls from my family, but she could be one of us. Yeah. And so I was just thrilled that, oh my gosh, when I saw the pencil sketch, I cried because her eyes, and she was exactly who had been living inside my mind forever. And yes, I'm just, oh my gosh, talk about winning the lottery. Yeah. That right there was incredible.
It's a beautiful, it's so, well, they said striking in the question, but yeah, striking the design.
Yes, I love that you can see her sports bra and her expression. Yes,
baby hairs. She's so cute. Love her. Love her.
And also, it was very important to have a dark-skinned Argentine girl on my cover. Because sometimes when people, especially people who have not been to Argentina, they always associate Argentine people as light-skinned people. And I do have, in my family, as in a lot of Latino families, you have a spectrum of skin colors. And sometimes in the media, like if you watch Univision, Telemundo, you're going to see the light-skinned people being featured. But I really wanted a dark-skinned girl to be featured because of that. That's who lived in El Barrio. That's who I pictured. So I'm really grateful that I got to have her.
Yeah, she's great. I love her. Someone else asked, hold on, let me double check. Someone else asked, oh yes, this is Christina. The first line and paragraph of FURIA are so powerful. Is lies have short legs something that you learned when you were young too?
There's a saying that las mentiras tienen patas cortas, which is pretty much a literal translation that I've heard all my life. Not only in my family, but just a very common saying in Argentina. And I think in a lot of Latin countries, they say that a lot too. But yes, it's something that I grew up listening to all my life.
Yeah, there was a couple of, like, you could sense that there were like a lot of adages in there and a lot of very specific elements of this country, but also specifically this neighborhood and this place, down to like the food that they're eating, the things that they're drinking, the places they're going. I love that. It all felt, I mean, most of it was not familiar to me, right? Because I'm not from Argentina. I don't know this place, but it felt like it could be, you know, like, and I think that was it, the possibility of like, I could know this place. You know, and I thought there was such beautiful texture there.
I love that. Thanks.
Yeah. Linda Camacho wants to know which was the most difficult character to write?
Oh, the most difficult character was the father. It was hard to write the scenes with him, going deep enough. And my editor would say, oh, I love this, but I think we could go deeper. And that was hard. That was hard to put myself in that mental space. Because I love Camila and I didn't want her to suffer, but you know how it is. We have to make our characters suffer. Yeah. So definitely writing about the dad. And, you know, I think if there is one person who is he is also very layered because we see a little bit of him from what the mother says from when they were young. But we mainly see him from Camila's point of view. So her perspective of her father is very negative. So if there is one person who's just the one dimension, it would be the father, who is the main villain of the story. He is the personification of all the toxic things in her society. So he was the hardest one to write.
How did you write? That was one of my questions. That the intense scenes, because there are a couple of rather intense scenes, and it's interesting to hear your editor saying, "No, go deeper with that." You know, how would you sort of prepare yourself to write those scenes?
I just would put on a song on repeat for a long time and just write and not think about it, and disconnect the Wi-Fi from the computer and just go there and where I didn't want to go. And so I that was the only way through was to go in.
Yeah.
And I write pretty much in a linear way, and I knew I couldn't get to that delightful chapter 10, which is when Diego and Camila go on a date. And this is not a spoiler, but it's something that that was one of my favorite scenes to write, and I knew I couldn't get to that if I didn't go through the darkness first. So
yes, I remember working on my very first book a million years ago when the earth was cooling, and my mentor at the time, I remember I wrote a scene that was a scary, intense scene, and I kind of wrote around the edges of it. And I remember him saying, "Be brave," like, you know what I mean? And he was just sort of, "Be brave," like you have to sort of like just go in, like go through exactly as you're saying.
It's funny because
I
had it like a knot on my shoulder for a long time while I was working on Camila and on FURIA, and that's because of bad posture when I'm like working on my computer. But it's also a lot of emotional energy just placed on a knot on my shoulder, and whenever I wrote a very difficult scene, that knot went away, at least temporarily. And that was all of the tension that I was holding. I just had to go through it and let it go.
Oh, that's real. That's really real. Lang asked a little bit about your writing process. That's always a fun question, but everyone's answer is so different, and it's different from project to project. Is that the same for you?
Well, sometimes when I get an idea, I daydream all the time. And so I love to just I drive around a lot. And so when I'm driving around, sometimes I won't listen to music. I just go inside my thoughts and let the story wander where it goes. And sometimes I do find my way in, and that's when I start jotting down on a notebook or a Scrivener file where I start dumping all kinds of things that come my way. I do believe in synchronicity, and sometimes when I'm working on something, I will see a news article or see an image that inspires me, and I will just dump everything in that Scrivener file until I'm ready to write a very loose synopsis and then start writing the first chapter. But it's not until I hear my character's voice that I can start drafting.
And when you start drafting, do you know how it ends, roughly?
Yes. And even if I don't know the exact scene, there is a feeling that I shoot for. I want to get to a note, speaking in musical terms, and I do write my way to that note. And so that's why sometimes the ending will even surprise me, but in a way, it's what I have been working towards the whole time.
Yeah, I like to plan. I've become a planner. I've become one.
The thing is now I don't have the luxury of just wandering around for years to discover a story. Now that I have deadlines and responsibilities and contracts to fulfill, I have to know what I'm getting myself into before I can start working on it.
Well, speaking of deadlines and contacts and things to fulfill, are there more events coming for you? Are there any particular events or festivals you're really looking forward to that people can make sure to mark on their calendars?
Yes, I have an event tomorrow, and my mind is, I have my event list here right now. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking with Candace Montgomery at Third Place Books. And then next week, I have events with Andy Ellis at the King's English, Maria Padian at Skylight Books, and Jaquira Diaz with Word Up Community, and then with Alex Temblador at Interbank Books. That's through the end of September. Also, I'm very much looking forward to an event with Romina Garber, and she's a fellow Argentine American. Her book is very different from mine, but oh my gosh, it has my... I love fantasy, so I don't write fantasy very much, but I consume it constantly. And so she writes about werewolves, the Argentine werewolf, the legend of the seventh child in a family becoming either a witch or a werewolf. I grew up with those legends, and I was thrilled to read Lobisona. Yes. And those covers, oh my gosh, and I can't wait for that talk with Romina, so we can get to talk about our Argentine girls who are so different from each other, but they have so much in common as well.
Well, we love all those stores, but we mainly love Books and Books. So you want to make
Yes.
sure that you buy your
Yes.
your copy
Yes.
of FURIA right here. You've
Please
also
do.
yes,
Please
please buy
do.
your copy. You've also signed book plates, right, for Books and Books.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
good.
So
So they'll
order
be
it
signed.
tonight,
Mhm.
and you'll get a signed book plate. And
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. And so, what are you working on next? I know Christina's on, but I have one more question. Someone else, I think you asked that.
Yeah, I did.
What are you working on next?
I am finishing up edits on my third book for Scholastic, which is called Wish Upon a Stray. I love my Scholastic books because they're middle graders, but they also contain the themes that you will find in FURIA, and my work for young adults is condensed for my younger readers. And Wish Upon a Stray is about a girl who comes from Argentina, and she speaks English already, but then she discovers how everything's so different here in the US and how hard it is to leave your family behind.
I love it. Thank you so much, Yamile.
Thank you, Chantel. This has
My
been
pleasure.
delightful.
Thank you so much for both of you for being with us. I absolutely love this book. It does so many things so well, so fearlessly. Just thank you for writing it. Thank you for sharing tonight with us. Thank you, Chantel, for your wonderful questions. For everyone watching now or later, that green button at the bottom of the screen will continue to work, and we will send signed book plates as long as we have them. So wishing everyone a good night. Thank you again, Yamile. This was wonderful.
Thank you. This was delightful.
I'm excited for your next events, and I definitely want to see you talk with Romina. We love her. She's one of our local authors, and
oh, wonderful.
yeah,
Yes.
we're big fans. So
Thank you so much.
good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.